Senator, I believe we have a moral obligation to help those at-risk Afghans to come out of Afghanistan. If confirmed, I commit to you to look at what options are available to be able to assist in that, Department of State.
Will you commit to come back to the committee, I think it's implied in your answer, with such a plan and a description of options and assets that could be made available?
Senator, I will.
Thank you. Do you think that there are necessary assets in Centcom right now, if you know, to support that kind of plan?
Senator, I would have to look at the current missions, if confirmed, look at the current missions assigned to Centcom, the resources allocated, and identify the risks associated against all of those. If that additional mission is applied, what resources, and does that place others at risk or go back for additional resourcing for that?
Thank you. Well, I welcome your commitment to come to us with a plan and description of the assets that could be made available, and if necessary, additional assets that would be required. Thank you. Let me ask you, final question. When we're talking about defending against missiles and our allies that need those defenses, the Iron Dome is one very reliable and important means of Israel defending against its adversaries' missiles. Would you agree that replenishment of the Iron Dome capacities of Israel is important to the security of that country and potentially our own?
Senators, you know, the U.S. Army just got 2 Iron Dome batteries that are going through testing and evaluation, and I believe it's had about a 90% kill rate in terms of being able to knock down targets, but I do think that Iron Dome should be funded.
And that it should be funded and replenished for Israel because, as you have absolutely correctly observed, it's a very reliable defensive, emphasize defensive, mechanism.
It is, Senator.
Thank you very much, General. Good luck.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Ernst, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. General Kurilla, thank you so much for being here today and for your many, many years of service, and to Mary Page and to your daughters as well. Thank you for the love and support that you have given to General Kurilla. I'm coming from a unique perspective here in that, General Kurilla, I've had the opportunity to know you better than 25 years, closer to 30, and I've had the opportunity to watch your career, and am extremely impressed with the path that you have chosen and has been chosen for you. I am very excited about your opportunity to serve as our CENTCOM commander. And while you can't assume confirmation, I absolutely can, because I will be supporting. We've talked about a number of issues today, and I'll associate myself with so many of my colleagues in the threats that we are seeing around the globe. China's influence in CENTCOM, Russia's influence in CENTCOM, certainly Iran. And then you also have all of the violent extremist organizations on your plate as well. Senator Blumenthal's point, as far as those that we've left behind in Afghanistan, that remains heavy on my heart as well. So many of us are working to find opportunities to bring these folks out of Afghanistan and safely into, whether it's third countries or into the United States. So I look forward to your partnership there. So we've talked through so many of those issues, but beyond being tactically proficient and sound at your craft, which you are, there are other things that commanders do need to be concerned about, and that's the health and welfare of their soldiers. And we all know and understand in the SOF community that humans are more important than hardware. And you exhibited that in the 82nd Airborne with focusing on mental health and brain health and the checkup from the neck up. And if you could talk a little bit about the importance of mental health and well-being of your soldiers, and what you will do to continue those types of movements within CENTCOM.
Senator, thank you. Senator, one of the areas that we're trying to look at right now in terms of mental health, we know that anytime a soldier does a permanently change of station, that's a very high stress environment. And so we do our medical professionals do a screening of, a full evaluation screening of everyone coming into Fort Bragg right now, regardless of unit. And we identify those that are either moderate or high risk, and they're able to talk to a mental health professional that day. Sometimes we can miss the transition from someone who's coming from one installation to another. And so we start with there, and then we also make sure that they have the availability of the mental health professionals. Additionally, we have an ongoing effort right now, whether you're an E1 private or an 09 lieutenant general, that you must go talk to a behavioral health specialist annually. We do it for our teeth annually, because you never know what someone's going to say behind closed doors, that they might be able to talk about some challenges and issues they have, and if that saves one life, then it's worth it. So we're working through that right now.
Mm-hmm. And by having every soldier and every officer do that, do you feel that that takes away the stigma of having those conversations?
100%, Senator. When they know that that individual has to go in behind there, you never know what someone's going to say behind closed doors. And if they know that I even have to go behind there and talk to a behavioral health specialist, that can only help reduce the stigma.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, and look forward to working with you on those efforts as well. Again, there are so many challenges that exist across the spectrum over the horizon. I know as we spoke the other day, you'll go into the position, I'm assuming confirmation for you. But going into your position, you'll do an assessment, and I believe that you will at some point come back to the committee, and if you need additional resources, you will absolutely let us know. Is that correct?
Yes, it is, Senator.
Okay. We look forward to that discussion. And again, I'm going to yield back the last 30 seconds, but General Kurilla, I know that you have the intestinal fortitude to move quickly and easily into this position. Wholly support your confirmation. God bless you. Thank you so much for your service to our great United States.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Ernst. Senator Warren, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And General Kurilla, welcome to you and your family, and congratulations on your nomination. I'd like to focus on one of the topics that you and I discussed when we met last week, civilian casualties. I think everyone in this room can agree that U.S. military operations kill far too many civilians. In the past 2 decades, the United States has killed tens of thousands of innocent people, including hundreds of women and children across a half-dozen countries in the Middle East and Africa. Now, we'll likely never know the true numbers, given the difficulty of accurate reporting and the Pentagon's failure to fully investigate reports of civilian harm. This has been the unfortunate reality of U.S. military operations, despite congressional oversight, despite dozens of watchdog groups raising the alarm, and despite documenting the harm, and despite DOD's own efforts and attempts at reform designed to improve how it protects civilians. So, General, you've been nominated to lead the United States military operations in an AOR that has seen the lion's share of these casualties. Civilian casualties, obviously, they destroy the lives of those affected, and that alone is reason enough for reforms. But would you also agree that these civilian casualties harm our credibility abroad and fuel the very insurgencies that we're fighting against?
Senator, they do.
Good. I mean, that you recognize this. Do you want to say more about that?
Senator, every civilian casualty is a tragedy. I know that there is a process right now down at Centcom. If confirmed, I would look to see how I can improve upon that process.
Well, it's clear that we do need reforms, and I'm glad that you want to focus on this. But instead of tackling this problem head on, the Pentagon has repeatedly weakened accountability for civilian casualties. Most recently, there was reporting from the New York Times that detailed a secretive U.S. task force that used loopholes in the law to sidestep safeguards that were designed to protect against civilian casualties. The Times also found that DOD prematurely dismissed many civilian casualty reports at the assessment phase without doing basic due diligence, like internet searches or searching in Arabic. General, do you agree that any credible reports of civilian casualties deserve the Pentagon's full attention and thorough investigation?
Senator, I do, and I think the Secretary of Defense's new civilian harm mitigation and response plan of action that he's asked to come back in 90 days from 27 January, if confirmed, I would look to be able to participate in that to make the process better.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're committed to full investigation. We'll see what happens with the reforms. You know, it's clear that additional reforms are needed. I have ideas on that front. I'm sure there are others. I'm not alone in this. So let me just see. I know we have a report coming out, but General, if confirmed, will you commit to prioritizing reforms that will mitigate civilian casualties resulting from U.S. operations and improving accountability and transparency at the Pentagon on this issue?
Senator, I will.
Good. I really appreciate it, General, and I want to say thank you. You know, I've said it before, but it deserves repeating. The system is broken. We cannot accept the deaths of innocent civilians as just an unavoidable cost of warfare. It's long past time that DoD addresses the harms that U.S. military operations have caused and implement meaningful reforms that de-emphasize lethal force and prioritize civilian lives. I have already asked President Biden to incorporate these ideals into his upcoming counterterrorism review. But General, if confirmed, I think you're going to have an opportunity to set the standard for protecting innocent lives and actually implement some real change here. So I look forward to working with you. I hope we can make some improvements in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Senator.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Warren. Let me recognize Senator Tillis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, thank you for being here. Congratulations on your nomination. I intend to support you as well. I don't gamble, but I do bet from time to time, and that's when I'm absolutely certain that I'm going to win it. So I have to agree with Senator Ernst. I think you'll have strong support from this committee. I have a couple of questions. One is within your current area of responsibility, but do you believe the decision to deploy elements out of Fort Bragg to Poland and to Germany was a wise decision from a reassurance standpoint?
Senator, the mission we were given was to reassure our NATO allies and to deter Russian aggression against those NATO allies. So we are deploying elements of the 18th Airborne Corps headquarters, the 82nd Airborne Division, and other elements of 18th Airborne Corps to Poland and Germany.
Question, I don't know if it's been asked before, but within your future area of responsibility, do you have any concerns at all with the continued implementation of the vaccine mandate and readiness or troop strength?
Senator, I don't have any concerns with that right now.
I did have a question related to what Senator Warren said. Just more curiosity. I don't know the answer to this, but do you have access to a body of knowledge that would say in the past years that the United States has been responsible for the killing of tens of thousands of innocent civilians in this area of responsibility?
Senator, I am not aware of the exact number.
It would seem to me that it would be far less than that. And one question that I have in that, at least in some of the after-action reports that I've seen, it appears as though ISIS in particular finds a way to embed itself in populations where they're putting maybe some innocent lives in harm's way, but do you agree that that tends to be a tactic of theirs, and we're doing everything we can to be more surgical in our approach to taking out bad actors, but recognizing that innocent civilians are not something that our military is in the business of trying to do?
Senator, in my past experiences, I've seen these ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Taliban do hide among the population, and we do our absolute best to try and not harm civilians.
Well, we can always get better, and I do agree with some of Senator Warren's comments about how do we get better, but I also think we have to recognize that we're talking about people, particularly in Afghanistan, where we're concerned with their reconstitution, either ISIS or Al-Qaeda, now in a breeding ground for, I think, potential attacks within that area of responsibility and within the homeland. We heard public reports of 6 months to a year before we could actually have a threat on U.S. interest, either here or abroad. we have to continue to take that fight to them, or they're going to take it to us. Would you agree with that?
Yes, Senator, the timing, I would defer to the intelligence community on the exact time because the conditions continue to change.
I want to talk a little bit about Iran. Are you familiar with the Abraham Accords implementation?
Senator, I am.
Do you think that that's a footprint that we should expand? And do you have any ideas on other countries that should be in the pipeline?
Senator, I think it is a very good thing because anytime we have countries that are talking, it's lowering the temperature in the room. It also goes to economic growth and creates job growth in some of these countries where you have a high unemployment in some of these Arab countries. With Bahrain and UAE right now, members of the Abraham Accords, I think that is a very good thing. I would defer to, having to understand the reasonings behind other countries, why they are not coming forward right now, but I do think there is opportunities going forward.
Do you generally believe your job is going to be easier or harder if we just pass a CR rather than appropriate authorities?
Senator, we need timely, accurate, predictable funding.
What sorts of capabilities do you think you need in addition to what you already have for our own forces, but also for our partners in the area of responsibility?
Senator, I really can only speak on behalf of 18th Airborne Corps, but it does affect readiness. It can affect modernization, and it can affect quality of life.
One other question, just in or not a question, just to reinforce a point that was made by Senator Blumenthal. The one thing that I hope when you move into this role that I'd like to get feedback on is the extent to which Centcom can play a role in prioritizing those who want to get out of Afghanistan. We succeeded in getting several out, but it's only a fraction of nearly 800 cases that in North Carolina alone that we're tracking. And I believe that your engagement in the interagency activities to make sure that we're prioritizing the most at risk and those who have had a longstanding service as partners with the United States when we were in Afghanistan, I think that that is a role that I hope that you'll take seriously and assert because you have insights, you have background. I have a lot of service members who are desperately calling our office and looking to get folks out, and I hope I can get your commitment on making sure you play an active role in that.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator, thank you for your support for Fort Bragg.
Thank you very much, Senator Tillis. Now let me recognize via WebEx Senator Manchin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, General Kurilla, for your service and your willingness to continue to service in the most honorable way.
Senator, you are talking, but we cannot hear you.
Hold on.
We have
Let's
a technical
I'm off mute.
complication.
Hold on. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
No, we cannot hear you, Senator. Do you want
How about
to
now? Anything?
recede for a moment and fix it, and we'll call on someone else?
Oh, Jesus, what happened? How about, hold on, I got to go to another meeting.
Here, Senator. So let me take the prerogative of asking if we can fix that, and then let me call on Senator Sullivan.
On your side?
We're muted and the microphone is showing like talking. I don't know what's going
Ask
on.
for Senator Kramer here.
Absolutely. Senator Kramer, please.
Anything I can do to help. Thank you,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Thank you, General, for your service and your willingness to step into this new role. Congratulations. I don't think you're going to have any trouble getting the job. We've seen reports that the Houthi rebels in Yemen are firing missiles at UAE, at El Delfra. And there are some North Dakota airmen there. And these Zulfikar missiles that they're firing, of course, were designed and are built in Iran. And do you think the Houthis bought those missiles from Iran, or did Iran donate them to the cause?
Senator, I believe that Iran does fund the missiles that go into Houthi.
So do we consider these attacks on our airmen to be Houthi attacks or Iranian attacks? And either way, do they demand a response, do you think?
Senator, Iran funds the Houthis. The Houthis were firing at the UAE. I cannot say if they definitively were firing at at American service members going forward. I'm not aware of the intelligence behind it.
All right. I want to spend just a minute, and by the way, I associate myself with several of my colleagues who've asked you about Afghanistan prioritizing. I appreciate Senator Tillis's request of a commitment to do everything we can to due to concerns about the UAE's relationship with China. And I know these things are complicated, and to be upfront, I'm more curious than I am committed to a position on this, so I really would like your views and your expertise. What are the benefits of selling UAE some F-35s in your view, if there are some? And then, of course, the opposite. What are the risks?
Senator, I believe the benefits are that you have a close partner that gets a very capable equipment that serves as an offset to Iran.
So what's the downside, and how can we mitigate any risks?
The downside is technology transfer that could be leaked. Can they safeguard the technologies, as the F-35 is an exquisite piece of military hardware?
So can we mitigate that somehow, that concern? I share the concern, by the way.
Senator, if confirmed, that would be an area that I would have to make an assessment on, but the State Department and others, as they look at this.
So maybe just elaborate a little bit, and you know, your answers are very concise and good. I appreciate that, but do countries like UAE and other countries like them, do they have many options for these kind of exquisite weapons systems, and particularly if the U.S. refuses to sell them?
Of the F-35, no, but there are other capabilities that I believe they have looked at in the region and from other partners.
Well, I appreciate, again, the efficiency of your answers. As I said, I'm curious. I'm trying to gain my own perspective based on a lot of other people's perspectives. But I have to say, on balance, I'm concerned that we're allowing this relationship with UAE and the opportunities that it presents to slip away if we don't ask more questions of people like you. And while I don't have a commitment, I certainly lean more toward trying to be the source of their exquisite weapon systems rather than somebody else, and hope we can mitigate. With that, I'll yield my last minute, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, General.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Kramer. We have a technical issue with our colleagues who are trying to participate on WebEx, so we will recognize those who are person. Senator Sullivan, are you ready?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, congratulations. Thanks for your service. Really think it's been exceptional. Fully intend to support you. As you and I discuss, I have my own experience out in the Centcom AOR. I was recalled to active duty at the end of 2004 and was there as a staff officer to General Abizaid until the middle of 2006, so a year and a half. And have you had the opportunity to talk to General Abizaid or other Centcom commanders to get their advice prior to this hearing?
Senator, pending confirmation, I plan on talking to several of them.
Good. I would strongly recommend that. General Abizaid, in my view, is one of the most strategic thinkers we've had in our military in a long, long time. One of the things that I witnessed during that year and a half, huge concern, was the proliferation of EFPs. And, you know, we were in Iraq on a regular basis. General Abizaid was. I was with him during that time and saw this proliferation starting in Basra and into Baghdad. Can you describe very briefly what those were, what they did?
Senator, an explosively formed penetrator or an EFP had the capability to go through any of our military vehicles that we had at the time. I lost several friends and soldiers from them.
So you lost soldiers under your command to the EFPs?
I've lost soldiers to EFP, Senator.
So I don't think this is highlighted enough, General, but I'm sorry about that happened to you. In 2007, the then Iranian ambassador to UN, Ambassador Zarif, who later became foreign minister, was quoted as saying the Iranians did not provide any EFPs to anybody, Iraqi Shia militias, and that the U.S. was lying and fabricating evidence about that. Who do we now know supplied Iraqi Shia militias these EFPs that killed and wounded thousands of Americans?
Senator, that came from Iran.
So Zarif was clearly lying.
Yes, Senator.
General, what do you think the Iranians learned during that period? What's the estimate that you've heard of how many were killed and wounded? Best and brightest, by the way, in our country with regard to these EFPs that killed our soldiers, Marines, airmen, sailors.
Senator, I'm not sure the exact number, but I believe it's around, the number is somewhere around 400.
400 and several thousand wounded, correct?
Yes, Senator.
What do you think the Iranians learned during that time as they were killing our troops? Zarif was lying to the world, and yet there didn't seem to be any kind of retaliation from the United States.
Senator, I'm not certain what they learned from that.
You think it was good that there was no retaliation at the time, or we didn't make them pay for the deaths of Americans?
Senator, I think we were fighting the insurgency at the time. I can't presume to understand what the Iranians were thinking at the time.
I'll just give you my sense. I think that they thought that they could kill Americans with impunity and not pay a price. And to the contrary, the price that they didn't pay, but they were actually rewarded with the JCPOA. The Secretary of State John Kerry negotiated with Zarif, one of the many outrages, I think, under Kerry's tenure, to literally negotiate and almost become buddies with them. You saw this other thing that Kerry and Zarif were talking a couple years ago, where Kerry was providing what looked like classified information, literally with a guy with American blood on his hands to get the JCPOA. I talked to President Trump about this a number of times. Do you think that we were able to regain deterrence after the United States killed the Quds Force leader, Soleimani?
Senator, I do.
Did you agree with that strike?
Senator, I don't think any adversary should be able to kill Americans with impunity. Given the intelligence at the time, I would have taken the strike.
So if you're confirmed, and I hope you will be confirmed, will you commit to this committee to work hard to keep that deterrence that I think we've actually more specifically, if Iran tries to or does kill Americans the way they've had a history in the past of doing that with impunity, will your advice to the President be to make sure that there's retaliation so they pay a price?
Senator, I believe my job is to provide options that the civilian leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll have some more questions.
Thank you very much, Senator Sullivan. As we've noticed, the microphone is not functioning as properly well, but I think senators can compensate for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Use a louder voice so we can make sure we are heard. General, good to see you in person. We were having a little technical difficulties, so I was able to run down here to be able to ask these questions personally of you. Thank you for your distinguished record of service to our country. General, in November, the Department of Defense stood up the U.S.-Israel Operations Technology Working Group. It was an initiative that I've certainly been championing for the last few years, and I believe that it's absolutely vital that the U.S. remain on the cutting edge of defense technology development, and that working with capable allies like Israel is really paramount to that effort. So my question for you, sir, is can you discuss how working in a collaborative fashion with Centcom allies like Israel on technological development, this could help the United States itself stay at the forefront of defense innovation?
Senator, I believe Israel has some very unique capabilities. They have a culture of innovation. in their country. So I do believe that each country has some unique capabilities, and working with all of them can help the United States as well.
Within the last few weeks, the United States has announced plans to reroute $67 billion of security assistance for the Lebanese armed forces to support members of the military as Lebanon grapples with a severe financial crisis. Notably, the aid package will include livelihood support payments that will go directly to troops to help them weather the extreme economic conditions being faced in their country. General, can you discuss what the U.S. can do to support Lebanon during this time of political turmoil, and more broadly, why support of the Lebanese armed forces is actually important to the U.S. national interest?
Senator confirmed that is an area that I have to make an assessment, but I do know in my past experience our relationship with the Lebanese armed forces. They're a multi-sectarian organization that supports all of Lebanon and can act as a counterbalance to Hezbollah. They are an accountable organization, and any military aid that we provided during my experience in my past, we're highly accountable for that.
Colonel, the past month we have seen continued escalation in the conflict in Yemen, with Houthi militias directly attacking the UAE and the Saudi-led coalition, continuing to pummel the Yemeni people into submission. What efforts have we been making to end this conflict and to bring a close to the world's worst humanitarian disaster that we have seen since World War II, and so to this time have not succeeded. Moving forward, what can the U.S. and our allies do to bring about an end to a war which is now entering its 8th year?
Senator, I don't believe there's any military solution for Yemen. There should be a negotiated settlement. I believe in supporting the UN and the Armed Special Envoy for Yemen in that effort.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your answers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Peters. Senator Scott, please.
Thank you, Chairman. General, thanks for your service. Thanks for being here. What lessons would you draw from the policy and strategic decisions leading up to the deadly withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan, and how would you apply them if you were confirmed to lead Centcom?
So, Senator, I know that I applaud the Congress on the War Commission that they're doing to identify the big lessons learned strategically over the last 20 years. I believe the Secretary of Defense right now also has an after-action review ongoing. If confirmed as the Centcom commander, that is an area that I will go and assess those lessons learned and ensure we apply them, much like we have in the military since I was a second lieutenant. After every operation, we did an after-action review to say what can we get better, but we must learn from it.
Under what circumstances would you think advised would cooperate militarily with the Taliban?
Senator, I think areas that would have to be a pragmatic approach. If there was a threat to the homeland from ISIS-K, which they are a rival, there is potentially an area there. And I also think on the humanitarian crisis that's ongoing, look at ways that we can get the humanitarian relief to the people of Afghanistan that need it. Maybe not necessarily through the Taliban, but they would have to facilitate it perhaps through the World Food Program, perhaps through Pakistan or others.
What's your view of Israel's inclusion in Centcom?
It should be working.
It's working now?
Yeah.
Ah, that's better. Okay, what is your view of Israel's inclusion in Centcom, and where do you see new opportunities to expand cooperation between Israel and our other regional partners?
Senator, I think there's significant opportunities with Israel's inclusion into the Centcom AOR. It starts with the Abraham Accords and the normalization of relationships between several of the countries in the AOR. I think there's opportunities for others, but those are individual decisions based on that. There's areas of security cooperation between Israel and other countries, particularly in integrated air and missile defense and other security areas.
Thank you. What do you see, what do you think China's strategy in the Middle East is? So how is that completely different than ours?
So, Senator, China has economic interest and influence that they're looking to gain in the Middle East and the Centcom region. They have a Belt and Road Initiative agreements with 18 of the 21 countries in Centcom. They have increased their spending in the Middle East by 360% over the last year. I think what we need to do is show their predatory nature of these agreements. They treat every country as if they're a client or a customer where we deal in relationships and we treat them as allies and partners.
And what do you think we ought to be doing to counter that?
I think we strengthen those partnerships and allies to show them that we are still there for them.
You think that takes money?
I think it takes money. I think it takes presence. I think it takes engagements.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much, Senator Scott. Now let me recognize Senator Kane, please.
General Kurilla, thank you, and congratulations on your nomination. I look forward to supporting you. Just to state some facts at the outset that I don't think have gotten enough attention, and this is by way of thank you to the American military regarding the evacuation of Afghans. The United States military, in a very difficult environment, evacuated about 125,000 Afghans, 50,000 or so to third countries, mostly in the region, 76,000 to the United States. Of the 76,000 Afghans who have been evacuated to the United States, most came into Virginia at Dulles Airport or into the Philadelphia airport. I visited families at the Dulles Expo Center right near the airport as they were arriving. And then they were transitioned to 8 military bases around the country. All of these heavily supported by the DoD. 3 of the bases were in Virginia. As of today, 68,000 of the 76,000 Afghans have been resettled in communities across the United States with a multi-government, multi-agency effort, DoD, DHS now the lead agency, NGOs participating in significant ways so the Afghans can begin a new chapter of life in the United States. I visited with Afghan families at each of the 3 bases in Virginia, Quantico, Fort Lee, and Fort Pickett. All those bases are now returned to their normal military operations, and there's no more Afghans there. Last week, the DoD indicated that the remaining 8,000 Afghans would be resettled likely by the middle part of this month. It's been an incredible effort to bring 76,000 Afghans here. In my visits with them, they express fear and anxiety, obviously, about the future and about the fate of loved ones in Afghanistan, but also deep, deep appreciation to the United States, to the U.S. military, to the opportunity that they're being afforded here to begin a new life that's a safer life than the one they left. The burden is still on our shoulders, though, to make sure that this resettlement of Afghans in the United States is successful. Most of the Afghans in the United States are under a 2-year humanitarian parole that expires at the end of 2 years from their arrival here. Mr. Chair, it is my hope that as we get into the NDAA discussion, much as in the past the committee has grappled with SIV issues for Afghans who've worked in tandem with U.S. military, the committee might explore what we could do with respect to the humanitarian parolees in the United States. We talked about this yesterday. These matters are in the jurisdiction of the Judiciary Committee, but it has been common for the Armed Services Committee to grapple with SIV issues to support our Afghan partners, and I would hope we would explore ways we could be of assistance. But the scale of the effort, both on the ground in Afghanistan, tragically leading to the death of 13 troops, the injury of another 4 or 5 dozen U.S. troops, and the deaths and injuries of hundreds of Afghans. You know, I don't like to say that I can improve upon Scripture, but a powerful line in Scripture is, greater love hath no man than this, that he would lay down his life for his friends. I can improve on that. It's greater love to lay down your life for someone you don't even know. And the fact that our 13 troops tragically lost their lives, but in doing so paved the way for 125,000 people to experience freedom and more security is a powerful thing, and we'll never forget their sacrifice. I want to ask you this question. Does the United States have military forces in Iraq right now purely to assist the Iraqi government in the ongoing mission to make sure that ISIS is defeated?
Senator, they do.
And in your view, is the government of Iraq a strong security partner of the United States in this mission?
Senator, the Iraqi security forces are a very strong partner in this. The government of Iraq currently is forming after Muqtada al-Sadr gained a plurality of the last vote.
Is the United States at war with Iraq?
No, sir.
I would renew my request to my colleagues that the war authorization against the government of Iraq, 2 of them actually, one passed in 1991 and one passed in 2002, be repealed, since they are now a security partner and we're not at war with them. The last thing I'll say, General, I would just encourage, along the line that Senator Peters asked, attention to the situation in Lebanon. The Lebanese Armed Forces has been a reliable partner for the United States, and that's great. I think most accounts of Lebanon suggest that it is close to being on the verge of a collapsing state, and that poses such significant danger in the region, to Israel, to the Lebanese population, to other neighbors. The armed forces may be the one institution in that country where we can be a strong partner, but with other aspects of the government in or near collapse, attention from Centcom to that important historical partner is something I would urge. I appreciate your service, and Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Senator Kane. Do you have a comment, sir?
I was just going to thank the Senator for his support for our 3 bases that have 18th Airborne Corps soldiers on up in Virginia, Fort Lee, Fort Eustis, and Fort Story.
Thank you, sir. Let me recognize Senator Blackburn, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General, welcome. Welcome to you and your family. And thank you for the time that you spent visiting with me last week. I really do appreciate that. And we discussed China and how they're focused on getting customers and clients, and the U.S. is focused on allies and relationships in the region. And I'd like for you to expand a little bit on how you're going to push back on China, particularly as we discussed last week with cyber and AI, how you're going to be able to do more with less, and what new capabilities are on your tick list for what you need to counter what Beijing and Moscow are doing.
Senator, if confirmed, again, I would have to make an assessment of each of the countries in the area and the relationships and the inroads that China has made into each one of those countries. And each one, I think, would be individualized based on that.
Okay.
Exposing the predatory nature of their lending is a big part of that. I am concerned with the inroads that Huawei has made into several of the countries as they look to do their infrastructure, and we know the security concerns associated with that.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your comments about the 18 of the 21 countries in Centcom have done a BRI agreement with China. And talk a little bit about where you see that Belt and Road ending and military fusion and how that affects the task in front of you if confirmed.
Senator, I believe right now for China it is economic in the Centcom region, although they do have their largest base outside of China in Djibouti, which is just across the Gulf of Aden, south of Yemen, and it is at a strategic choke point by the Bab el-Mandeb. So that is very concerning. It allows them to do maintenance on some of their vessels while they're overseas. And my concern would be any expansion of that into the Centcom AOR if confirmed.
And I've had the opportunity to visit our facilities and our presence in Djibouti, and it is of tremendous concern to me as you see how China is trying to expand in that region. We've talked a good bit this morning about Afghanistan, and this committee has put a good bit of attention on that. And I want to come back and kind of finish off a couple of questions that have been presented to you. Are there any instances where you think we should be sharing intel with the Taliban? And if that is done, would you commit to informing us, even if it's in a classified setting, that that has occurred?
Senator, looking at the specific incidents, I think it's a case-by-case basis based on that with the Taliban. And I will commit to sharing incidences with both, share it with the chairman and the oversight committees and the Secretary of Defense.
For those of us on this committee, we've continued to look at what happened in Afghanistan. And for people like me that represent a major military post, and so many of our Tennesseans are with Fort Campbell, or they're posted at Fort Campbell, or they have served. and to see how this has, how it took place, the debacle that it became has been of tremendous concern. One other thing on that, with the Taliban takeover there in Afghanistan, how do you assess Pakistan's role in supporting the Taliban in Afghanistan, and what is your assessment of how they're working to help get people that we're trying to get out of Afghanistan, how they're getting them out?
Well, Senator, first off, thank you for your support for 101st Airborne Division at Fort Campbell, one of our 18th Airborne Corps units. Senator, I am not aware right now of what Pakistan is doing in my current role to assist in getting out. I think that is an area that we could potentially work with Pakistan on. I think they are concerned about the regional stability in the area and the violent extremist organizations inside of Afghanistan. The Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, the TTP, is a very violent organization that has killed tens of thousands of Pakistanis, so they have a vested interest and a security interest with us on that, as well as the humanitarian crisis inside of Afghanistan.
Thank you for your service, and thank you for being here with us today to answer the questions. Thank you, Mr.
Senator.
Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. Now via WebEx, let me recognize Senator Manchin, please.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
I can hear you, Senator.
Thank you very much. General Kurilla, first of all, thank you for your service, and thank you for your intent to continue to service, and we appreciate very much. Let me just ask you this. ISIS remains a threat in Syria, as we all know, and most of its activity is focused on reestablishing networks, assassinating and intimidating local leaders and security forces, and extending its influence in rural areas throughout eastern Syria and Iraq. So my question would be, do you assess that the February 3rd killing of ISIS leader Kurilla gave a significant blow to the ISIS in the region? And how do you plan to capitalize on lack of leadership if it did really truly break up their network?
Senator, anytime a leader of any terrorist organization is taken out, it causes the leadership to have to figure out who will take over. It generally temporarily sets them back. It depends on the capability of that leader that was in charge. But then what it does, it also exposes that network as they communicate and try and find the next leader to replace them, and that provides opportunities.
So the opportunity of intel right now is probably a premium.
It is, Senator.
Let me say this. I want to also tell you, sir, I appreciate so much the efforts that you all have made to protect all civilians, and we truly do. But we also know, I think Senator Tillis, both points. You had Senator Warren, who was concerned, and we're all concerned, and Senator Tillis identifying that basically they embed themselves in. So we know your job is difficult. We sympathize, but also we cannot allow these terrorists to go unchecked or undeterred. That's for sure. In the past, countering violent extreme groups with Al-Qaeda and Islamic State was a top national security, both of which are critical challenges to Centcom area of responsibility for decades. How do you assess the shift in resources with China and Russia right now taking the forefront in national security challenges facing the United States? That shift in resources would affect Centcom.
Senator, I'll have to look at the missions, if confirmed, look at the missions assigned to Centcom, the resources allocated, and the risks associated with each of those missions, and look at ways to mitigate that risk. One of the ways is partially through partnerships and allies that can make up some of that mitigation, and also through technology going forward. But then I would come back to both the Chairman and the Secretary of Defense and inform this committee of any additional resources required.
Let me ask if you have any knowledge of the validity to China's talking points of partnering with the Taliban in Afghanistan, and if so, how are we going to counter that?
Senator, I know that the Taliban has reached out to China. That was in open source, but if confirmed, that is an area that I'll have to make a deep assessment of.
And sir, National Guard operations with Centcom. In West Virginia, the National Guard already has a strong connection with Qatar through our state partnership program. I think it was one of the first in the Middle East. It might still be the only one, I'm not sure. We also had multiple units rotate to the Middle East throughout our wars with both Afghanistan and Iraq. Additionally, over 50% of the total force of C-130s are operated by reserve component units And we have a large contingency of that also in West Virginia. Can you tell me how you think strategically when employing National Guard units in your area of responsibility?
Senator, I have observed as the Centcom Chief of Staff that our National Guard and our Reserve provide tremendous capability into the AOR and can also help offset the impact on the active duty force as well.
So you all, in your planning and operations and defense and things of that and security, you're using National Guard and their abilities is basically with your own forces?
Senator, we've used the National Guard in all my experience in the Middle East.
Well, let me say thank you. I appreciate very much. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much, Senator Manchin. Now let me recognize Senator Hawley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, congratulations on your nomination. Thank you for being here. Let me ask you about disturbing reports in the Washington Post today. The headline is, Documents Reveal U.S. Military's Frustration with White House Diplomats Over Afghanistan Evacuation. The Washington Post has been able to see a 2,000-page Army investigative report. This committee has not been able to see that report. It's not, I don't think, been made public. The Post has it. Their reporting today begins this way. Senior White House and State Department officials failed to grasp the Taliban's steady advance on Afghanistan's capital and resisted efforts by U.S. military leaders to prepare the evacuation of embassy personnel and Afghan allies weeks before Kabul's fall, placing American troops ordered to carry out the withdrawal in greater danger, according to sworn testimony from multiple commanders involved in the operation. General Farrell Sullivan goes on to say in his sworn testimony, in my opinion, the National Security Council, it's at the White House, was not seriously planning for an evacuation. Now, this report is disturbing for all kinds of reasons, not the least of which is it seems to directly contradict testimony that this committee has heard from, among others, General Milley, who had said that there was no way to have planned for or have anticipated the fall of Kabul. There was no way to have anticipated that anything like this would happen. And in fact, what the Army report seems to say is that military commanders repeatedly and for weeks, if not months, warned the White House and other leadership that something like this was imminently foreseeable, there needed to be action taken, and the White House and the State Department did nothing. Here's my question to you. I understand this morning that now Centcom and OSD have taken possession of this 2,000-page report. If you're confirmed, will you commit to releasing that full report to this committee?
Senator, I would defer to the Secretary of Defense and the Joint Staff on that.
So that's a no.
Senator, if it's within my authority to do so, I would, if confirmed.
If confirmed, and if it's within if it's up to you, you would do it.
Senator, I believe it is publicly available.
If confirmed, do you commit to provide to this committee in a timely manner any other information requested about the withdrawal in Afghanistan, including intelligence reports, assessments, and other material that may be at Centcom?
Senator, I will provide to the Secretary of Defense and the Joint Chiefs and oversight committees whatever is required.
Okay, the last part is the only part I'm interested in, the oversight committee. You would provide to this committee intelligence reports, assessments, other information that we request on the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Senator, I will come before this committee and testify on those reports.
That's not quite what I'm asking. I'm not asking about your testimony. I'm asking about you providing information that we directly request that may be held at Centcom. Would you commit to us, if you're confirmed, to providing for us information that may be held at Centcom regarding withdrawal from Afghanistan, intelligence reports, assessments, et cetera?
If it's within my authority to release, I would, Senator.
Great, thank you. And I just want to say for the record that this committee needs to have open public hearings on this report. We need to have open public hearings on what we've learned about what has happened in Afghanistan, and no more closed briefings behind closed doors that shut out the American public and the cameras that we see behind us. And frankly, this committee's scarce interest in finding out what has happened in Afghanistan, I think, reflects badly on this committee, and it's time for members of this committee to get serious about it. Let me ask you, General, the Secretary of Defense has designated China as the department's pacing threat and the Indo-Pacific as its priority theater. Can I just ask you for a yes or no answer? Do you agree with that assessment?
I do, Senator.
Great. If the Indo-Pacific is the priority theater, then it would follow that other theaters are by definition lower priorities, not unimportant. But if they're not the priority theater, then other theaters are lower priorities, and that would include the Middle East, I would think. Do you agree with that the Middle East would be a lower priority theater as compared to the Indo-Pacific?
Per the 2018 NDS, that is accurate, Senator.
Okay. And do you agree with that assessment? By the
I do, Senator.
Okay, good, great. The Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs wrote for the record, this is Admiral Grady I'm referring to, wrote for the record that DOD needs to do less in lower priority theaters so it can focus more of its scarce resources on deterring China in the Indo-Pacific, barring a significant increase, of course, in the defense budget. Do you agree with that assessment by the Vice Chairman?
Senator, I do.
Very good. Let me shift squarely to your AOR. Recent reports show that Israel and the UAE are moving quickly to improve security and intelligence cooperation. You've been asked a little bit about that, I think, in earlier parts of today's hearing. It's a great example of the opportunities created by the Abraham Accords, and I know that you've testified today that you understand the possibilities there. It's an example, I think, of something that Centcom can support in years ahead now that Israel is part of your AOR, the Centcom AOR. If you're confirmed, here's my question. How would you plan to empower Israel and our Gulf partners to work together and to strengthen deterrence at the regional level against Iranian aggression? And I see my time's expired, so I'll let you answer that, General, and then I'll return to my time to the chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, I think I have to make an assessment of that to find the best method forward. I think it's by going to each individual country and making that assessment.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Senator Duckworth, please.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by disagreeing with my colleague from Missouri in saying that this committee has scant commitment to looking at what happened in Afghanistan. In fact, on a bipartisan basis, this committee passed the Afghanistan War Commission Act, which will set up an entire commission to look at the entire 20 years of the war in Afghanistan, including the evacuation. And it also provides for equal representation, equal opportunity for the ranking member and the chairman of both the majority and minority committees on SASC, on foreign relations, and on intelligence to appoint committee members, as well as the minority and majority leaders. I don't think it can be any more fair than that, and the fact that it passed on a bipartisan basis, I think makes it clear that this is going to move forward, and there's a commitment overall on a bipartisan basis to look at everything that happened in Afghanistan. With that said, welcome, General. Thank you. I want to apologize to you for cutting our call short the other day. You were very, very generous. It was one of those crazy days. I want to return to our discussion there, talking about the fact that after decades of focusing much of our budget and capability on Centcom, we are now shifting rightly towards the Indo-Pacific region. However, I do believe that Centcom remains a critical part of our overall strategy to push back against great power rivals, as senators on both sides of the aisle in this committee have pointed out, given that Russian and Chinese attempts to grow their influence in the Middle East, as well as Iran's ongoing push to develop its nuclear capabilities. I was really pleased to see the emphasis you place on partnerships and coalitions in your written testimony. And we do agree that we must better integrate our partners into our operational planning, and we must reinforce viewing their capabilities as the coalition's capabilities. So again, go with your pacing item. So we have to look at what our partners can do. Yet, as we discussed on our call last week, capabilities are more than just military equipment. This is why I truly believe that engagement and exchange programs, such as our International Military Education Training, the IMET program, is so critical to success in the region. What opportunities, General, do you see for partner engagement and exchange programs, including IMET, to retain influence in the region and prevent potentially malign actors from gaining a toehold in the Middle East?
Senator, I believe IMET is one of our more powerful capabilities we have. When we bring foreign officers to the United States and we expose them to our democratic values, they understand us and they understand our society. That is very powerful in helping, because eventually they continue on up and become senior leaders in their respective countries. I think the partnership goes well beyond just military capability. It can also include intelligence. The one commodity we have a lot of is our intelligence capability and our intelligence sharing. Every country in the Centcom AOR would like to do intelligence sharing while still protecting our sources and methods that we use to get that intelligence. So I think that's an area that we can look to advance as well.
Thank you. What reforms, if any, would help you to make these partner engagements and exchange programs more effective in Central Command?
Senator, my attempt would be to make an assessment going into Centcom. I really can't give you that right now. I'd have to look at that, and I'd be willing to come back and provide that to you.
Thank you. Thank you. We've already talked about the National Guard and the State Partnership for Peace program. Although that is not the only model, CENTCOM houses a unique program between the National Guard and the country of Israel. It's run at the National Guard Bureau, level. The program allows Israel to tap into the Bureau's expertise across the National Guard's many missions and capabilities. It provides training opportunities for multiple National Guard units, including those from Illinois. This program was reaffirmed last year after an initial 15 successful years and now falls under Centcom. Could you speak to the value of this program and how it would fit into your objectives for Central Command if you are confirmed?
Senator, I'd have to make an assessment of that and then come back to you.
Okay. Along with my partner across the aisle, Senator Cornyn, I fought to include a provision in last year's NDAA that pushes for a partnership between the National Guard and Taiwan. After reviewing my legislation, the National Guard Bureau believes that partnership with Israel provides the best model for a comprehensive engagement with Taiwan. If confirmed, once you've had a chance to review, would you make resources available within CENTCOM, either yourself or your staff and planners, to help implement a similar program between National Guard and Taiwan that is similar to the partnership with Israel, if requested?
Senator, I'd have to make an assessment on that, reference Taiwan being in the Indo-PACOM AOR.
Right, but if they came to you and said, hey, can you tell us how it works with Israel? Would you be willing to share that information with Admiral Atcorlino and the folks dealing with the Taiwan version?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I look forward to you being confirmed, and again, I apologize for the abruptness of our call, abruptness of this, but I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Senator Kelly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Kurilla, congratulations on your nomination, and thank you for being here today. You certainly have extensive experience, and I know you've spent a significant amount of time in the Centcom AOR, so I know you understand some of the challenges that await you. I noticed that your former boss, General Votel, commended your engagement on adoption of technologies like artificial intelligence, calling you an early adopter, and emphasizing their applicability for Central Command. As chair of this committee's panel on emerging threats and capabilities, leveraging AI and other autonomy technologies is something that I'm very focused on. And we often discuss this in the context of great power competition. But I believe these capabilities will be increasingly important in regions like the Middle East, where we no longer have the sizable military presence and advantage that we've had in recent decades. So can you elaborate on how, if confirmed, you would leverage artificial intelligence and other emerging capabilities to address current challenges that we face in the region?
Senator, thank you for that. I believe artificial intelligence, when it enables a human, can exponentially increase the capability of several of the things that we do now. Particularly where we're focused right now in the 18th Airborne Corps is in our targeting capability, where we can take large pieces of terrain and rapidly identify hundreds of targets, prioritize them based on a high priority target list that determines which ones we should strike with the resources that we have. And then that then goes back into our firing solutions on doing that. And that happens in seconds versus what would take hours normally, or sometimes even days, to be able to develop these targets. And it's doing it in real time, at the edge, in our command posts, and not being tied just back into a garrison computing environment. We do this quarterly, and we do it with all 6 services participating, and we share that with all of them in an attempt to make all the services better with our artificial intelligence, so rising tides raise all boats.
It would be great if you could come to us with some ideas of what you would need next. If you could think about what does AI on the battlefield look like a decade from now, and let's make sure we develop the tools so it will be available. I want to move on to a couple other quick topics here. The Iraqi F-16 fighter force, they paid us $2 billion for these airplanes. The Arizona Air National Guard, the 162nd Fighter Wing in Tucson, plays a very critical role in training these Iraqi pilots to fly these F-16s. The 162nd is uniquely qualified to do this because of the access to ranges and unmatched flying days per year in southern Arizona. And the squadron also has decades of experience training foreign national pilots. General, what is your perspective on the value of the foreign pilot training to our combatant commanders?
Senator, anytime we can get a partner to do something that we would do, that is a good thing because it reduces the requirements and resources on us.
And I'm also concerned about, reports that the F-16 fleet faces, the Iraqi F-16 fleet faces some serious maintenance issues and readiness issues. So can you report back to this committee on both the status, if confirmed, the status of the Iraqi Air Force's F-16 fleet and actions needed to remedy any deficits?
Yes, Senator.
And then finally, General, as you know, Israel, which was once the purview of the European Command, is now part of Central Command, and you will oversee Central Command if confirmed. While there are a number of challenges and opportunities facing Israel, one concrete action we can take is to support our ally is ensuring replenishment of the Iron Dome system, which was incredibly successful in the May 2021 conflict, but also has been depleted. I'm proud of the role that Arizona has played in developing this technology, the technology behind the Iron Dome system, and I believe it's important that we work quickly to ensure that it can remain operational to protect Israeli civilians. What is the threat to Israel if the Iron Dome system is not replenished in a timely manner?
Senator, the Iron Dome is a very capable system. The Army currently has 2 batteries that it's undergoing testing and evaluation. Israel does face a significant threat with literally hundreds of thousands of missiles, both in Hezbollah and both in Hamas. So what it does is a great defensive weapon system. So I am very supportive of the Iron Dome.
Okay, well, let's make sure we work together to ensure that we replenish and return Iron Dome to its full operational capability.
Senator.
Thank you, General.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. I've been informed that Senator Rosen is finishing up her questioning in another committee and will shortly be available via WebEx. That will give me the opportunity, General, to ask 1 or 2 more questions. First, Russia has a significant footprint in Syria, and Russia now is confronting NATO in Ukraine. But going back to Syria, how do you project their role there together with their pretensions with respect to Ukraine?
Senator, I believe if Russia does invade Ukraine, they would not hesitate to be able to act as a spoiler in Syria as well. Already we see it as one of the most contested electromagnetic spectrum environments that we're currently operating in. So I believe they're a competitor of ours.
So when you assume command of Centcom, you'll be very sensitive to reactions within Syria by the Russians that may be a consequence of something happening in Ukraine. Is that fair?
Absolutely, Senator. And again, I don't believe Russia wants to go to war with us, and I know we don't want to go to war with Russia, so I would be very sensitive to that.
Thank you very much. I believe that Senator Rosen is available, so now via WebEx, let me recognize Senator Rosen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Of course, thank you, Ranking Member Inhofe, for holding this hearing. And I would also really like to thank you, General Kurilla, for meeting with me last week, for your lifetime of service and your willingness to continue serving and leading the men and women of our armed services. And so, as I've noted in previous hearings, as you and I have discussed, Iranian-backed militias are increasingly targeting U.S. installations and service members in Iraq and Syria via rocket and drone attacks. Iran, the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, continues to threaten the U.S. and allied interests in the Middle East and around the world via not only its ballistic missile program, but also its support for Hezbollah and the Islamic Republic's multitude of terrorist proxies. So, General, can you discuss the threat Iranian-backed militias in the Middle East pose to our U.S. troops and our allies, and how do you believe the U.S. should respond to their proliferation of attacks? How are you going to take on this challenge if confirmed, and what's our ability to target them? Do you have everything you need?
Senator, I will not be able to make an assessment if we have everything I need until, if confirmed, actually make that assessment. It is a big concern of the Iranian-aligned militia groups that are currently operating both inside of Iraq and then other elements operating inside of Syria, going after our service members. I will always protect our people, and I would take action against them if they took action against us.
Thank you. I want to also build on that a little bit as we think about Israel's transfer to Centcom, because now that Israel is within Centcom's area of responsibility, it is my sincere hope that this transfer will potentiate even greater military cooperation between the U.S. and Israel through our shared goals, as well as cooperation between our Arab and Israeli partners. So, General, I want to follow up on Senator King's question. If confirmed, how would you leverage the Abraham Accords to improve defense cooperation in the region in furtherance of U.S. interests? And do you have any plans to integrate the joint exercises with Israel and Arab states who've signed on to the normalization agreements?
Senator, if confirmed, I'll make an assessment of the best ways to increase the cooperation between Israel and our Arab partners in the region. I think only good comes out of that when they're talking. When you have countries talking, it lowers the temperature. Israel brings some very unique capabilities in terms of their military component that they believe they can share with their Arab partners in the region to increase, specifically air and missile defense is a big area based on the threat from Iran. I'm a big fan of joint exercises because I believe collectively rising tides raise all boats when you make the elements train together and they get better.
So you definitely see a benefit to and opportunities to Israel's inclusion in CENTCOM.
100%, ma'am.
And you spoke a little bit about Iranian incursion. And so what is your current assessment of CENTCOM's ability to respond to Iranian nuclear breakout? And I know you're not confirmed yet, but what are the contingency plans you believe CENTCOM should be prepared to execute in order to prevent an Iranian nuclear weapons, any capability?
Senator, if confirmed, I would have to make an assessment of the current military capabilities and plans for any military action along those contingencies.
Thank you. And of course, lots of terrorism in the region. And so we have to think about our future counterterrorism operations in Afghanistan. And I've asked questions in previous hearings about our ability to conduct counterterrorism operations in Afghanistan now that we no longer have a boots on the ground presence. And I'd like to ask you a little bit about this as well. So, General, if confirmed, how do you plan to execute an enduring counterterrorism strategy that will be able to address and counter the influence of violent extremist organizations in Afghanistan and the region?
Senator, over-the-horizon counterterrorism is difficult. It's not impossible. I think I have to make an assessment of the actual mission and then those resources to apply against it and highlight the risks and look for ways to mitigate that risk, either through basing additional resources, intelligence assets, technology that can then increase the effectiveness of that counterterrorism.
Thank you. I see my time's just up, so I'll submit this for the record, but I just wanted you to think about what the collapse of the Afghan government, how it's going to affect ISIS, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, Syria, and the Arabian Peninsula. I'll submit these questions for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. General, let me thank you and your family for a lifetime of distinguished and dedicated service to the Army and to the nation. And I think you've persuaded all of us, I suspect, that you have the character, the experience, and the judgment to lead CENTCOM. I look forward to your confirmation. With that, I will adjourn the hearing.
Thank you, Chairman.